Hello, I'm Donna from Make Sense Psychotherapy, and this is my third video for raising teens in lockdown. This video will look at sleep, some issues that we might be having with sleep, and some tips on how to manage. So the first thing to say is if you yourself are really struggling with your sleep right now, you're in very good company. We're seeing increasing numbers of people that are noticing this COVID-19 and lockdown situation is hugely impacting on their ability to sleep well. Now, there are a few reasons for this. The first is that worry and stress is a very active brain state, very busy. And of course, it's the opposite to what we need when we're trying to drift off into sleep. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that actually our routines have been hugely impacted. For the vast majority of us, we don't have the same time anchors that we would have done before. So we're not going to work, not going to school, we're not going to college, and we don't have those things that are chunking up our day as they would normally. And so knowing that it's time to sleep and being physically tired enough to sleep is really quite a struggle for some people right now. So the first thing I would say with regards to a tip is keeping to a sleep routine. Now, what I mean by that is actually making sure that you go to sleep at the same time every night and that you wake up at the same time every morning. So not being tempted to stay awake for an extra 2, 3, 4 hours just because you don't have college or work to go to the next morning. So being aware that staying in a really clear sleep routine will enable your brain to sleep easier, because it's those triggers and understandings of, is this time to go to sleep, are the things that actually really help us get a good night's sleep. So that's the first thing. So adults, again, should be aiming for between 7 and 9 hours. Teenagers between 7 and 11. Now, of course, they are ballpark figures and they are generalised figures. So they are not specific for everybody, but that's the general idea. So a good sleep routine that enables you to get a good amount of hours in and stick to it. Do not be tempted to fluctuate from that, because what does it matter what time I get up? Because that can really start to interfere with when you want things to go back to normal. And of course, things will go back to normal or a new normal, and we will need a good sleep routine in place then. The other thing I would encourage you to think about, especially parents, is to think about those routines that you would have put in place for the very young members of your family, or when they were very young. So the babies and the toddlers. Think about those rituals that you would have put in place. So maybe a nice warm bath, and then a milky drink, and then the house becoming quiet and the lights getting dim, and a nice story. All of those indicators and signifiers to your baby and toddler that it was time to sleep. Now, for some reason, as adults and as teenagers, we seem to think that sleep is just like a switch, and that because we decide to sleep, that's exactly what's going to happen right now, even if we were really active just 10 minutes before. So the idea of having ritualised behaviour before you go to sleep, so maybe it is a hot bath, maybe it is a milky drink, maybe you read a book, whatever it is, dimming the lights, those are signifiers to your brain to notice that it's getting into sleep. So not just the time, but the things that you do as well. The other tip I would say is about your bed. Now, I know that in multi-person households right now, our beds are being used for a vast amount of things, whether it's for being a work station or an office or a socialising space if you're using Zoom and Skype and FaceTime, all of those things. But actually, keeping our bed associated just with sleep is really important if you can. If you do need to use your bed, and if you're not lucky enough to have a bedroom big enough that has a chair in it, change the space if you can. So maybe pull the duvet onto the floor and sit on the floor, or sit at a different point on the bed. Anything that changes the association into the bed being something different. Because the more we associate the bed with being alert and being awake, the trickier it can become for some people to then use it to sleep effectively. So just bear that in mind. Something else to think about, obviously, with sleep, and it gets mentioned a lot, is screen time. So blue light on phones and iPads, and actually how much we're consuming. So we understand that with screens, that blue light can really interfere with the melatonin production, which is a sleep hormone which signals it's time to go to sleep. It doesn't make us sleep, but it signals the brain that it's time to start that process. Now, if you're looking at lots of blue screen and blue light, that actually it gives a message to the back of the eye that actually it's still daylight. And that's partly the reason why also households that dim the lights and things get quieter and darker can really enable people to sleep better, because that light is really important. So think about that with blue screen. And the idea is to not have blue screen at least an hour before you are due to go to sleep. Of course, the other thing about screens and iPads and phones is it's not just the blue light, it's the content that we're consuming. So very, very stimulating, causing us to engage with things much more than we need to before we're trying to get into a sleep routine. So think about that, what we're consuming, how stimulating it is, and the blue light. And if you can, don't have screens in the bedroom with you, or if they are in the bedroom, please turn them off, because studies have shown that even just being in the bedroom, it can actually interfere with sleep. The other thing with regards to consumption, think about caffeine. So how much caffeine are you consuming? If you are somebody that is struggling with sleep right now, you might choose to think about limiting your caffeine after about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Because for some people, caffeine, obviously it's a stimulant, it can really interfere with good restorative sleep. Similarly with alcohol. Now, of course, alcohol is a sedative, but it can still prevent the quality of sleep that we have. So I know some people, some adults may be tempted to use alcohol as a way to enable them to get to sleep. Now, of course, that will help that because it is a sedative, but the quality of sleep is not as good. So you may not wake up feeling as restored or as refreshed as you might. Again, with consumption, think about what you are choosing to view and look at and put into your brain before you're sleeping. So alongside blue screens, you may not choose to actually enter some of that news content, especially updates around COVID-19. If you find you're somebody that's feeling particularly stressed and worried about that right now, do not consume that content before trying to get to sleep, because again, that will activate that fight and flight. It will activate that worry. So think about what you're consuming then. So one of the really clear tips is what I mentioned in the first video, is a breathing technique called the 7-11 technique. And it's a brilliant technique because it really activates the relaxation response. And it's really simple. You just breathe out for longer than you breathe in. Now, it doesn't have to be 7 and 11. You can breathe in for a count of 4, out for a count of 7, in for a count of 5, out for a count of 9. The numbers really don't matter. It's that longer out breath that you can practice as you're laying in bed, wanting to go to sleep, and enable that longer out breath to switch on that relaxation response, which will help that brain get into a really calm space to drift off into sleep. Another really lovely one that you can do alongside that breathing technique is a body scan. So as you breathe in, you can focus on your toes, and as you breathe in, you can clench your toes, and as you breathe out, you relax your toes. And then you just move all the way up your body into your major muscle groups, getting to the top of your head. And if you're still quite alert when you get to the top of your head, just go from the top of your head all the way back down again. On the in-breath, clenching the muscle, on the out-breath, just releasing it. It's a lovely one to do. The other tip I would give is visualization. So remembering and visualizing times that you have felt really tired. Really evoking how that felt in your body. So you've done the breathing techniques, you've done the body scan, you've done the muscle clenching, and now you're thinking and remembering and reminding that body what it feels like to be tired, how heavy the muscles get, how tired the body feels in that bed, and how grateful the body and the mind is to be settling down to sleep. So stick to a routine, have some rituals that you practice before you go to sleep so that brain knows it's time to sleep. Think about screen time, really limit that before bed. Think about caffeine and alcohol and what you're consuming. Think about the news content that you're consuming before bed, if that's what you've been choosing to do. Do the breathing, try the body scan, and remember how lovely it is to sleep. Take care.